Hello and welcome. This is your Saturday edition of The Agenda here on the SABC News platform. I'm Desiree Chalke. Let's start the show. Several flights to and from Tokyo's two main airports have been cancelled as Japan braces for what's expected to be one of the worst storms to hit the country in decades. Typhoon Hagibis is expected to make landfall later today, lashing areas still recovering from another storm. Hagibis means speed in the Philippine language, Tagalog. Airline ANA Holdings has cancelled all domestic flights to and from Tokyo's two main airports. Most train and subway lines in Tokyo are also due to shut down. Now we're joined on the line from Japan by the South African ambassador to that country, His Excellency Mr. Smuts Ngonyama. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Desiree. Good morning, the South Africans.
What time is it in Japan?
Well, the time now is about 4 o'clock in Japan.
4 a.m.?
4 p.m.
4 p.m. Okay, so that's the difference. Quite a disturbing story. We were all excited that South Africans were coming through to Japan for the World Cup, and now this story. What can you tell us in terms of the latest developments regarding Hurricane Hagibis?
Well, the situation is that Japan, in particular Tokyo and the prefectures around Tokyo, have been hit very hard by torrential rains and very strong winds that are actually ripping off the roofs and destroying the infrastructure. As you have and rightly pointed out, the transportation has been cancelled, the public transport, and also the streets in Tokyo are empty, the shops are closed. So it's 1,660 domestic flights that have been called off, and plus or minus 260 international flights that have been called off. And evacuation orders have been announced by the authorities, and because of the situation. The rivers are overflowing. There's general very strong intensity of these torrential rains and winds. As I speak right now, it's even very, very difficult to see outside, though it is during the day because of this heaviness of this torrential rains.
You say that it's 4:30 in the afternoon, and we have been talking about an anticipated landfall. Around what time is that expected to happen?
The landfall is expected at about they say about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the evening. That's what they've been saying. We are not sure because even the Hagibis itself has actually been downgraded. It's no more the heaviness that was expected here in Tokyo. It has gone down a bit. So we don't expect heavy destruction around Tokyo. But in the prefectures around Tokyo, in places like Chiba, where agriculture fields have been destroyed and some businesses also have been destroyed, the situation is dire.
Well, I suppose in an ironic way, that's good news when you say it has been downgraded. What sort of precautionary measures are being taken?
They are calling for evacuation and in places like Chiba and other prefectures around Tokyo, Yokohama, because of the heavy rains and because of the rivers that are overflowing. So they asking people to remain and within the shelters at home in general, and also the matches, as you know, the rugby matches have been cancelled for today, and the Grand Prix has also been cancelled for today. So there are no activities at all, and the people are indoors.
There has been a bit of confusion in terms of whether it's the entire, all the matches that have been cancelled or just the ones where the areas of the affected areas. What is the actual story, Ambassador?
Desiree, all the matches for today, the All Blacks versus Italy, England versus France, Ireland versus Samoa, all those were supposed to play, the All Blacks were supposed to play in Tokyo, and the England and France in Yokohama, Ireland and Samoa in Furuoka. And all of them have been cancelled, all those three have been cancelled. Tomorrow's matches, which is Namibia, Canada, USA, Tonga, Wales and Uruguay, Japan and Scotland, no decision has been taken. I think the Rugby World Cup committee is still watching the space so that they can give us an accurate decision, maybe tonight or tomorrow morning, whether those matches will be cancelled. So even South Africa team, Springboks, wouldn't know until Monday and which team they will be playing in the quarterfinals between Japan and Scotland, which are due to play tomorrow, until that match has been confirmed tomorrow. So the matches today, Desiree, and the listeners, are actually cancelled. All of them, All Blacks, Italy, England, France, Ireland and Samoa. And as you know, there has been complaints by some of the teams because they say it should have been anticipated by the World Rugby Committee that because Japan is usually experiencing these kinds of calamities, they should have prepared for the alternative venues, perhaps when they were preparing, or even reschedule the matches, because some of the teams are desperate. They need the points and to qualify.
Talking about the points, Ambassador, just clarify this for us. Are these games that are being, is it a cancellation or a postponement? There's word that the teams that won't be playing will be awarded points automatically. Is that the case?
No, yes, Desiree. What is happening is that the matches that are not playing today, that have been cancelled, they are not being rescheduled for a later date. They are cancelled completely from the schedule of matches, and the teams are splitting the points. For instance, All Blacks will get 2 points, and Italy will get 2 points. England 2, France 2, Ireland and Samoa same. So the cry and in some of the teams is that if that is the case, it means that some will be disadvantaged.
Yeah.
For instance, if you take a match tomorrow, Japan and Scotland are playing, rather are not playing. It means Japan automatically is going to qualify because they'll be given 2 points, and Scotland will lose if they don't play. And yet, that's a very tight match. Everybody is expecting that anything can happen in that match, but Scotland, if the match is cancelled, it means that they are out of the competition. And that's why now they have resorted to say that they will take it up legally and with the World Rugby Committee,
Seemingly
which would be unfortunate.
Seemingly there's going to be a lot of number crunching. You keep talking in our conversation about prefectures. Is this what we would call provinces back in South Africa?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Not a problem at all.
That's provinces. it's provinces, Desiree, and it's provinces, and they call them prefectures, yeah. But your team, Desiree, I can assure you, your team is strong, is in good spirit. They are motivated, Springboks, because they are the first ones that have actually qualified for quarterfinals. So they are not affected by all this. Instead, they are resting, and right now they are still in Kobe, where they played against Canada. They are stretching themselves today, and they're indoors, and according to Charles Vessels, who's the manager. And so our team is in good spirits. They are ready for any team in the next 3 games.
I like how at the beginning you said your team. You sounded so distant from it. Ambassador, how have you been interacting with the World Cup? Have you been following all the movements?
Absolutely. I've been attending all these matches, and I've been there even in the ante room and when the players are actually coming out of the match, and to give them support by sheer presence. At times they ask me to say something, then I would say, and whatever within the confines of the diplomatic and statements, and so the team is very strong, as Desiree. And let me say, our team is strong.
That's important.
Is strong, and the spirit, yeah, they are very, very cohesive in terms of spirit, and also the mental framework, which is very, very important. The captain is very strong, and now, because all along, he's been limping a bit, but he told me that now he's 100% fit. That's why in the last match he was made to play the whole and the time and 80 minutes and for the match. So Sia is ready for the next 3 matches. Rasmus, the coach, is over the moon. He's a very, very nice and very committed, dedicated, knowledgeable, and a rugby coach, and respected as well. The president, I had time also with the president, Mark Alexander. He's looking forward to Boks going to the finals. We all pray, and I think all of us as South Africans, tomorrow is Sunday, let's pray for Amapokopoko, and whether we are at work, let's pray for our team. We've done it before in two times, and we can do it now so that we are equal with All Blacks with 3 World Cup victories.
That's all very encouraging. Before we let you go, Ambassador, just back to Typhoon Hagibis. How many South Africans are in Japan? And in terms of the World Cup as well, have you seen good South African support?
There are so many South Africans, and they are moving from one and the place to the other in the prefectures, rather in these provinces where these teams are actually, the matches are actually taking place. You find South Africans in hordes and a very big numbers singing Shosholoza and go Boke, Pambili Mapokopoko. And they are very, 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 there are so many. They are highly behind, they are running behind their team. And in fact, what is surprising, there are so many Japanese, and Springbok is very popular. You see, that film called Invictus, which we tried to actually flight here as well, and before the matches and in various other prefectures, other people actually, they tried to show the film Invictus and of Madiba and the Springboks, Francois Pienaar, captain, and the rest, Chester Williams, the late, may his soul rest in peace. All of them, and it has made a very strong impact. I'm sure you noticed during the opening match, the loud singing of our national anthem by Japanese. So we have very strong and committed fans here, Desiree, and we want our country, everybody, to continue to be behind our Springboks.
Ambassador Ngonyama, the rugby might be a cultural exchange, but in recent days you have been very busy diplomatically. The president coming through 2 times, first for the G20 meeting and then for TICAD. What were your takeaways from these interactions?
Well, Desiree, and the takeaway is that South Africa is actually one of the top countries within the developing world that is highly regarded, because not all countries, Desiree, were part and parcel of the G20, as you know. South Africa was maybe one of the few countries. It was South Africa together with countries like Egypt that were present in G20, and the president had bilaterals with some of the presidents of many developed countries. And so we are very, very highly regarded as South Africa. G20 and has actually made a very strong point with regard to quality infrastructure focus by G20 countries for Africa. So Africa right now is part and parcel of the program of G20. TICAD, and as you know, and most of the countries of the continent, plus or minus 50 of them were present, leaders of the continent were present, and we came up with resolutions that are focusing on the Africa's development. And there's a clear plan of action now by Japan, and they're committing plus or minus 20 billion again to support our continent, US dollars rather, to support our continent. So there's a consistent rise of Africa because all the countries of the world have come to realize that Africa is a giant and that is now and they're waking up. And therefore, and the people believe, or countries believe, that they don't want to be left out. And by this rise of this continent, and which is having a very, very youthful continent, endowed with a number of resources, and which is highly, highly populated by the youth, which is the future and the consumers of many commodities and goods, and by the producers of the world, and also the opportunities for and to produce on the mineral resources that we have and produce them right at home to create more jobs. So we have such opportunities, and many, many companies now, for instance, and the president is coming up with the investment conference in November, and that investment conference is pulling a number of companies from here. It will be more than 10 companies that are coming, including Toyota, Nissan, and Hitachi, and many others that are coming over for that conference. So there is so much these activities have actually galvanized for our country. All what is needed is for us as South Africans to be very positive about our country and clean it up to make it sure that when investors come, we receive them and we make it easy for them to invest in our country. Otherwise, our country is very, very popular. Desiree.
In the 90s, when international business started having interest in Africa, a term was coined, the scramble for Africa. It seems it applies at the moment when you see, as you say, Japan, a lot of interest in Africa, China, a lot of interest in Africa, and Europe, a lot of interest in Africa as well. But this question keeps coming up over and over again in terms of what are Africa's interests going out to these continents and to these regions?
Desiree, and that concept will continue to be there because it was there negatively before. Now, and South Africans and Africans in general must be confident of themselves. They must take charge of their own continent because there's no more a situation where we can kowtow or even capitulate to other countries of the world to recolonize us. Not at all. We are now interacting with various countries of the world as equals. So it is incumbent on us as Africans to stand up and be counted, and so that we protect our resources. And when we open our resources, we open them up in our own terms and ensure that they beneficiate South Africans. South Africans must stand up. We must not actually, and Africans in general, we must not sort of kneel and hand over simply and so weakly and so cheaply our resources. Not at all. That concept called Scramble for Africa, it can actually work in our advantage because now we are in a position of power. Before, we're actually negotiating and getting into business from a position of weakness. Right now, we're in a position of power. We need to stand up. We have leaders that are very strong. We have South Africans and Africans in general, highly, highly educated. We have the youth that is open-minded, very strong, and highly educated. We have resources. So what else do we need? And so we don't have to be petrified by any people that come and invest. And we must set the agenda. We must actually set the agenda ourselves.
Ambassador Ngonyama, thank you so much for being generous with your time. So you say Typhoon Hagibis has been downgraded, and all we need to do now is the people who are there, all they need to do is take precautions.
Thank you so much, Desiree. Thank you to South Africans. Thank you for the time.
Ambassador, the South African representative to Japan, Ambassador Smuts Ngonyama.